This conference will now be recorded.
Good morning, everyone. So, in the last session, we discussed about the iteration statement yesterday. We have identified while loop, do while loop, as well as for loop we identified. So, today we are going to discuss about the jump statement here. So, basically, to understand this particular jump statement here, what are all the jump statements we are having? First, we need to understand here. Okay, the jump statement basically it is comes under the break, continue, as well as return. So these are all the three statements we are going to use as our jump statements here. First we'll understand the break and later we'll move on to the continue and later we'll try to understand about the return statement here. Okay. So if you observe this particular break statement here, first we have like this particular statement we are going to use in the three different locations. So we already aware of it in the switch cases when we are trying to work with a switch related example, we already identified how this particular break statement is going to work. Getting the point? So now, if you see here, we are using the break here. So what is the purpose of this particular break? If I'm not using this particular break, what happens internally? It will try to keep on executing even though the case is not satisfied here, even though the particular case is not satisfied here. Okay, to stop this particular the appropriate case once it is executed, we are going to use this particular break statement here. So okay, this is the purpose of this particular break statement we used in the switch related example. So one more we are going to use, so to exit the loop here. So to exit the loop, in the last example what we did here, we come up with this particular for each related example here, and here what we can do here, we identified, so if the value x equals to 50, what we are doing here, we are trying to break here. So what exactly it will do, it will try to terminate the loop here, because we are inside this particular loop, we are trying to repeat multiple times. Let me comment out this example and we'll see the same example what we did in the earlier. Okay, now understand here, we come up with extra, I think. Okay, so observe carefully here what we are doing here. We are trying to iterate values on the this particular number. So the number we is having, these are all the values here. Right. So whenever we are having these particular values, what we are doing internally, we are trying to printing the each value, and we are trying to do some sum of this particular values here. And after this, we are checking the condition here. If the x value equals to 50, now what exactly we are doing here? We are trying to break here. So when we are using this particular break, what happens internally? It will terminate this particular loop here. Getting the ball, it will terminate the particular loop. And when we are using the case, what happens here, once the appropriate case is executed, it will come out of the case and it will look for the one more iteration here. Or if we are not having the one more iteration, it will go to the wherever the case related examples are called here. Getting the point, is nothing but just once the whatever the case is satisfied, once we execute the case here, will come out of the particular case, we are going to use the break. And now, so in our loops related example here, to end of the like to exit the loop, so what we are using, we are coming with a break here. So this particular break, it will come out of the particular loop here. Okay, so let's have a simple example. Again we are going to run the same here. Yesterday we already run this particular example. Observe the value we are getting as a 600, and now you can see the values are printing 10 to 50. So why we are getting only 50? Because the from the 60 onwards here, what we are doing here, we are coming out of this particular loop because of this particular break here. Okay, so this is a simple example. We'll come up with the one more example on the break. I'm trying to write a break loop here, and now you can do this particular loop. We can write here int I is equals to 0 and I less than 100. Less than 100, I'm making the condition. So the iteration I'm going to give as a I plus plus. Okay, once we provide this particular iteration, Now what we are doing here, we are trying to check the condition. So what is the condition we are going to check here? If I value equals to 10. So just what we are doing here, we are comparing the value. If this particular I value equals to 10, now what I'm doing here, I'm trying to add break here. I'm trying to add this particular break. So if this particular I value it's not 10, now what I will do, I'm going to print this particular values. I'm going to print this particular whatever the I we are having here. Right. Now, once this particular loop is completed, again, one more println statement I'm trying to write here, that is called loop is completed here. Loop is completed here. Getting the point. So this is, we need to understand here how this particular loop is going to work here. So observe carefully. If we are checking the condition, if the x value equals to 10, then only it will break. Like break is nothing but it will end up the loop here. So it will stop this particular iteration. It will come out of this particular loop here. So otherwise, it will keep on executing it until this particular condition will satisfy, until whatever the condition we made here. So now run the same example here. Observe carefully. So 0 to 9. So 0 to 9 it's become 10 values, and once the 10 is satisfied here, we are breaking this particular loop here, and we are printing this line number 10 here. So when this particular line number 10 is going to print, so once we come out of this particular loop here, okay. So this is important here. Okay, any questions on this? So any questions regarding this particular for loop with the break statement? Okay, so if you don't have, now what we will do, we'll come up with a one more example here. So basically, while loop related example I'm going to write here. So this is defined for the for loop. Now what I'm doing here, I'm going to write come up with a for loop here. Int I is equals to 0. Int I is equals to 0. Now what I'm doing here, so I'm trying to define while here, and so this particular while, now what I'm doing here, I'm checking the condition. Whatever the I we are initializing, so I'm trying to come up with the same condition, I less than 100. So once we define I less than 100, now what we will do? So if I equals to 10, getting the one. So again, I'm using the same. If I value equals to 10, I'm going to use the same break here, getting the point. And now what I will do? So I will print this particular same here. But only the problem when we are trying to work with a while loop here, so we need to increment or decrement the value. Getting the point. So in the for loop here itself here, we are having iteration condition. We can write here. But inside the while loop, we don't have explicitly, we need to write like this. Explicitly, we need to define here. So now finally, what I'm doing here, I'm going to use the whatever the loop complete after this particular while here. Getting the point. So observe carefully, most of the code is same, but only the thing here inside the while loop, whatever the condition we are using here, I less than 100, the same condition I'm making here, and I'm checking the same condition. If this particular I equals to 10, I'm trying to break this particular loop. So once we break here, now what happens internally? It will come out of this particular loop. Getting the point. It will come out of this particular loop, and it will print this particular I values as well as the loop is completed. Now observe the same output we are going to get. The same output, whatever the output we have seen earlier, the same output we are printing here. But only the difference here, earlier we come up with the for loop. Now we are trying to use the while loop here. Getting the point. So this is also another important here. So it's nothing but, so when we are trying to work with a while loop, how we can use the this particular break statement. So we identified here. Getting the point. So these are all the two example we identified. Now, whenever we are trying to work with a nested example here, because when we are trying to work with a multiple for loops here, how we can come up with a break statement here? How we can come up with a break statement here? So this is also very important. We need to understand here. So now observe carefully what I am trying to understand here. So here only I am going to comment out. So this is one more example here. But what I will do, I will try to come up with a for loop here. So here I'm defining for loop, but the condition I'm not going to use 100. So just I'm going to use 3. Only the outer loop I'm trying to repeat 3 times. And after repeating 3 times here, now what I'm doing is I'm going to print. I'm going to print this particular values here. Just I'm trying to write the pause with the I value. Okay. Now you can see just I'm printing this particular I value. Along with this, now what I will do, I'm going to write one more loop here. In the bin, I'm going to write one more loop. So now observe carefully. Sorry, int j is equals to 0 because I already we defined here. And now, so j less than 100 I'm checking and j plus plus. So this is the nested loop here. Getting the point. This is the nested loop I'm defining. Now observe carefully. Again, I'm trying to check the condition. J equals to 10. J equals to 10. Now again, I'm trying to use the break statement here. So, but observe carefully what happens internally. So once we break this, so if the value is not 10, we are going to print the value in the pen. Now carefully observe which block, like which iteration statement is going to terminate, because we are having two for loops here. One is the outer for loop and the second one is nested for loop. So if you see, this is the outer for loop and this is the nested for loop. So what exactly we need to understand here? Getting the band. So which for loop is going to terminate here? Whenever we are using this particular statement here, whatever the nested for loop we defined here, whatever the nested for loop we define, the nested one is going to terminate here. Nested one is going to terminate here. Okay, so now observe. So now observe carefully. So once this particular loop is completed, now I'm going to use empty println statement. So just for printing the value on the next line, I'm trying to use this particular println statement here. And finally, so whatever the outer loop we define here, once the outer loop is completed, we are going to write the simple message here. So that whatever the message we used earlier, the same message I'm going to use here. Same message I'm going to use. But what we need to understand here, whenever we are using this particular break statement here, so it is not going to terminate the outer loop. So this is important. It is not going to terminate the outer loop. So it's going to terminate only the nested part. Whatever the nested part I'm trying to highlight here, this is the nested part is going to terminate here. Getting the point. Now observe carefully. I'm trying to save this and I'm trying to execute this. So observe carefully what happening internally. You can see 0, 1, 2, 0, 1, 2. Basically 0, 1, 2 is printing from the I value and so 0 to 9 is printing from the nested loop. Getting the point is nothing but J loop. If you observe carefully, this outer loop is repeating only 3 times here, and here if you see I value we are printing after colon, this J value is going to append here because both are printing on the same line. I'm not using the println, so just I'm trying to use a print statement here. I'm trying to use a print statement here. Getting the point. So this is very important. We need to understand here. Right. So this j value is printing how many times here? It is trying to print 10 times here. So 0 to 9. So 0 to 9 it is printing 10 times. Once the I value is, sorry, once the j value is 10, it will terminate this particular nested loop. It is terminating the particular nested loop, and again it's going to this particular outer loop. It's checking the condition. If the condition is satisfied, it will come to the nested loop. Otherwise, it will come out of this particular statement here. Okay, so this is very important here. Whenever we are trying to use the break statement for the nested loop only it's going to terminate, not the outer loop here. Okay, so this is also very important. We need to understand here. So any questions regarding this particular nested loops?
So, sir, the first four is this is indicating for the raw. Am I
Sorry,
right? No, I'm asking you that the first four is indicating the raw.
no, there is no row and columns here. See, this section is different because if you see all we are printing on the same line.
Mm-hmm.
So just it is a nested loop here. So this is an outer loop. We come up with the one more loop inside the outer loop. So whenever we are breaking this, it's going to break here. So it is not the relation between the rows and columns here.
Because it's printing three lines, and we gave.
See, the three lines is nothing but this loop is repeating three times. So if you observe carefully, J is insulin start with a 0. This condition will fail. How many times? So 0 to 9 times this particular condition will fail. Whenever the J value will become 10, now what happens here? This condition will satisfy. So this whatever the loop I'm trying to highlight here, it will terminate here. So once it is terminate, it will go back to this loop here. Second iteration. Same way, third iteration. So once the third iterations are completed, it will come to here. Okay, let's understand this. So we'll try to run in the debug mode. Now you can see in the variable section. So this is the variable section. You can see the how the values are highlighting here. Now I value 0. So now you can see I value 0. So the condition is satisfied here. So we are printing the first statement here. Now you can see past 0 is printing. Whatever the I we are having the I value 0 it's printing. So now we are moving into the nested loop. Now you can see, so j value how much? The j value also we are having 0. So this condition will fail here because j value right now we are having 0. So now you can see, so one more, the print statement is printing. So again the j value also it's printed 0. So second iteration, and now you can see third iteration. Okay, fourth iteration, like fifth iteration. So 7, 8, 9. Now if you see, so this is the last iteration. Now if you observe, what is the j value we are having? 10 here. Whenever the j value is 10, what happening internally? It will terminate this loop here. So it will exit this from this particular loop here. Now you can see, so println statements we are calling it. Now it's going outer loop. Okay, now I value 1. So again the j value is printing 10 times. Okay, now if you see, the 9 value is printing here. Final iteration j value 10 coming out of the particular nested loop here. So again the outer loop is repeating because the condition we made as a 3. So now you can see same, the j values will print one more time. So final one, so again it will break, so it will come out of the outer loop. So it's printing loop is completed. Okay, so this is the way the internally the outer loop and nest loops are executing here. Okay, still any questions? Okay, so now, so basically, I don't want to terminate the nested loop. Whenever this particular condition is satisfied, I want to terminate the outer loop here. Getting the point? So sometimes what happens here, so we are going to come up with some nested loops here. outer loop with a nested loop. But the problem, whenever some condition is satisfied, I want to come out of the all the loops here, not only this particular nested loop here. So I don't want to repeat these two times here. So I want to repeat only one time here. So what we can do in that case here? Okay, so this is also important here. So basically, if we want to come out of the all the loops here, so we have a one the keyboard call go to keyboard we are going to call like it's like if we are going to define the loop label here. So we are going to define the label name here. So the label name we are going to write at the beside of this particular break statement here. So if we observe carefully, now what I'm doing here I'm going to write outer, getting the pen. So what I'm doing here I'm trying to write outer here. So because it is a outer loop here. So if you see the same outer I'm going to use here, the same outer I'm going to use here. Carefully observe the same example. So try to remember this. So how we implemented this. So otherwise what we will do here, I will come up with a okay. So now observe carefully. So I'm trying to copy the whatever the output we have seen the ever example. Now if I'm going to run this example one more time, how many times it's printing here? How many times it is printing? Only one time here. But earlier if you observe carefully, how many times it is printed? Three times. So see the differences between the previous example and current example. So whatever we expected with help of this particular label, we are getting or not. So this is very important here, right? So if you see this first outer loop is repeating, the outer loop condition is satisfied. Now outer loop print statement is printing the value. Now we are moving into the nested one. So nested one is printing around 10 times. So it's checking the J value. If the J value 10, what we are doing here, we are trying to use a break outer. So earlier we did not use this particular outer. So just we come up with the break. But right now what we are doing here, we are trying to use a break outer. Outer is a one label we define for the loop here. One label we define for this particular loop. Now what happens internally? Whenever it is trying to satisfy the condition, it will come out of this particular loop. It will come out of the outer loop here, not this particular nested one. Earlier, so just it is come out of this particular nested one only. Okay, so if it is come out of the nested one, it's printing three times here. But whenever it is coming out of this particular outer loop here, only one time it is printing. Okay, so this is the difference between the outer label with without a outer label here. So any questions? This outer label, basically, this will call it as a go-to statement here.
Just one question. So that break outer, will it break only outer statement or including the inner for loop?
See, once we come out of this particular, again, how we are going to come to the nested. Getting the point. If this particular outer loop is repeating multiple times, then only we'll come to this particular nested one.
No, but what about the initial one? In the initial one, like it's stopping at
See,
9, right? Because we are printing in the if statement. So can you add one more sysout statement after if statement? After that if
so,
condition, can you add one more?
so okay, what I need to write there?
No, no, don't remove that. Add one more system.out.println. Anything like you can print the J value also.
Here we are printing, right?
No, one more saying because it's a one line statement, right? I just need to see whether that number is going beyond 10 or not.
See, beyond and how it is going. So if you observe here, 0 to 9, because J value is starting with a 0. Okay, so don't confuse here. So I'm going to run the example in the debug mode. So observe carefully how it is printing. Line by line, you can read. So pass value we are printing here. You can see the console 0. The 0 is coming from the I value. So now we are checking the J value. So initially the J value 0. So right side you can see I and J value both are 0. Okay,
Okay.
in the variable section. Now what we are doing, we are checking the condition, condition will not satisfied. So we are printing. So what is the value it is printing? 0. Because right now the j value 0. Okay, so now the j value 1. So j value 1 it is printing. So you can see in the console 0 1. Okay, now the j value 2. J value 2 is printing. So 3 is printing. Okay, you can see 0 1 2 3. And 4 values printing. And 5 is printing. 6 and 7 8. So now 9 is printing. Okay, once this particular 9 is printing, now if you see what is the j value right now?
10.
10. So when the 10 is values increase, this condition will satisfy or not?
Yes.
So you can see here, you can see the j value, j equals to 10, the value is returning true.
Hmm.
So once it is returns true, what happening internally? We are calling the break with the outer.
Hmm.
Okay, earlier we identified when we are using the break, just only this nested loop will terminate. But now we come up with the one label called outer. So where we are using this particular outer for this particular outer loop. Okay, so if I'm trying to come with the next line, observe here. From this particular line number 21, it is coming to the line number 26 here.
Okay.
Okay, so the line number 26 out of this particular scope of this particular outer loop here.
Okay.
Okay, so this is
Yeah.
the way this particular the label will work. This is important here because most of the time, so we may come up with multiple loops here, but based on some certain condition, we want to terminate all the loops here. So even though if you are trying to use 10 loops, so one by one, if you are trying to use a nested 10 loops here, what happens internally? So all the loops, if I want to terminate, this is the go-to label we are going to use. It will give you the expected result here. So otherwise, the nested loop only terminated. Again, we are going to repeat multiple times here. Okay. So any other questions?
How to know that we need to use this outer loop?
See, how to know is nothing but based on your understanding what is the application you're developing. So if you try to multiple times, then only you will get to know. So what is the result we are getting? See, that depends basically if you try to implement a multiple example. So then only you will understand what is the values we may get, and based on certain condition, what is the condition you are going to write. So based on that only we can easily understand whether the loop is will repeat multiple times or we want to repeat only one time. Then only you can decide.
Okay.
Okay, so just remember this. This is important here. Whenever it's required, you can use this particular statements and you can implement the go to level and you can stop the loop appropriate based on our conditions here. So this is only I can explain here. Okay, so one more example, I want to share something with this particular same label here, but this particular label will not work whenever we are having with a different example. So let me comment out this. Here I'm trying to comment out this particular example. So we'll come up with one more example. So here if you see, now what I'm doing here, I'm using again one for loop here. So I will come up with the same int I is equals to 0 and so I less than 3 only I'm trying to use. So I plus plus. And after this, now what I'm doing here, so I'm going to print this particular print value. Otherwise I will copy. So I'm printing this particular I value. And after this, now what I'm doing here, I'm going to come up with one more loop here. So if you see, this is the nested loop I'm trying to define. This is a nested loop. So I'm going to remove this. So if you observe carefully, now what I'm trying to understand here, I want to terminate, like I want to use this particular label here. So is it possible to use the label for this particular example? can we use the label? So here if you see,
No, uh,
why?
it's outside the loop, right? Both the loops
Yes,
are different.
different. So basically these are not the nested loops here. So these are all the outer, both are outer loops only here. So now what I'm doing here, I'm going to write otherwise one, and if I'm trying to use here the same one, it will give you an error. Now you can read this. So the label one is missing because here we already added the one label here, but still it is missing here because so it cannot recognize the one wherever we are using because there is no relation between these two loops here. Getting the point? So this particular loops, if I'm going to write under this particular loop, so you can see whatever the error earlier we are getting, the error is resolved. But right now, so whatever we are using right now here, there is no relationship between this particular loop as well as this particular loop here. So this particular label we cannot use like this. So only once we are inside the loop of another loop, then only we can use this particular label information here. Okay. So this is I want to share one more information here. Now we'll move on to the continuous statement here. So how exactly this particular continuous statement is going to work? Okay, so let's understand this particular continuous statements, how it is going to work. So sometimes basically what happens here, so break what exactly it will do based on the condition, it will come out of the loop here. But here the continue, so we are not going to come out of this particular loop here. So just will ignore the whatever the current iteration we are having. Whatever the current iteration we are having, so it will ignore. For example, I am trying to highlight this whatever we used earlier. I'm going to use the same one here, and so we'll use, I'm using this particular continue. Now understand this particular example, what happening internally. So if you see what happening internally, again it's trying to print 0 to 9, again it is printing 0 to 9, again it is printing 0 to 9. So why all the values are we are getting only in the same line here? Okay. So to understand this, now what I'm doing here, I'm putting a breakpoint here. Now I'm running in the debug mode. So observe with help of this particular continue how it is working internally. So observe carefully, I value 0. So I value 0, the print statement is printing. So J value also 0. So continue the condition, whatever the condition we have, it is failed here. J value is printing. So the J value will print up to 9 times here. Okay. Now you can see. So J value is printing 9 times. Now the condition is satisfying. So once this particular condition is satisfying, what happening internally? Observe. What happening internally? So even though if the whatever the condition is satisfied here, even though this particular condition is satisfied, this line is not printing. Whatever the line 24 we defined, it is not printing here. Why it is not printing? Because we come up with a label here. We come up with this particular label. Now what happening internally? So it's moving into the outer loop. Getting the point? Once this particular condition is satisfying, because of this particular label, it's moving into this particular outer. Observe carefully. So when we are using the break, it will come out of the line number 26 here. Okay, but for continue, what happening here? Again, it is executing here. So again, it is executing only the problem, like only the remaining, whatever the remaining conditions values we have, so those values are not repeating here because only up to 10 times is repeated. The remaining 90 times it is ignored here. Okay. Again, it is coming from the next iteration, I value 1. So again, it is printing Z value up to 9 times. And finally, the condition is satisfying, moving outer loop here. Okay. So if we observe, if I'm removing this outer, now, so understand the same example. So understand the Same example, I remove the go to label here. Now I'm printing the same value. J value will print out to 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. So 9 is printing. So this is the 10. Now observe carefully. So this is very important. This condition now it is satisfied here. So here you can see in the expression the j equals to 10, it is returning true. Once this particular condition true, now what happens here? Now what happening internally? Getting the point. So it is not coming out of this particular loop. So observe carefully. Again, it is printing the value. But only what is the value is missing here? Here the 10 is missing. After 9 we are not getting the 10. Directly we are getting 11. Now what we need to understand for this particular continue. So it will try to exclude the current iteration when this particular condition is satisfied here. So instead of printing this particular value, now what happened here? It will move on to the next iteration here. Getting the point? It will move on to the next iteration. So if it is move on the next iteration, so the values we are missing. What is the value we are missing? The 10 value. So directly we are coming with the 11. So now you can see it will try to print around 99 here. So you observe carefully. It is printing 99. So 0 to 99 is printing, but only one value is missing, what is called 10. Why the 10 value is missing? Because of we come up with the one condition called j equals to 10. We are using the continue. Okay, now we is moving into the outer loop here. So now we can see the outer loop is printing again same here. So you can see still the j value is false here because what is the j value we are having? 7. So observe here this expressions as well. This expression will return true whenever the particular j value will become 10 here. Now observe, see. So earlier it is false, now it is become true. Okay. So now you can see same thing. The iteration is missing. Now it is moving into the 11. The 11 value is printing from the 11 to again it is printing 99 here. Okay. So this is important here. This particular continue is very important here. Only it will exclude the current iteration. It will terminate the it will not print the whatever the information we are going to write based on the certain condition is satisfied here. Okay, it will ignore the current iteration. It will move on to the from the next iteration here. Okay, so this is I want to provide the information. So this is all about the continue statements here. So for continue, we cannot use this particular 100. We can come up with something like 10 or 20 something, so that the output we may get something smaller. Any questions? Okay, so I just want to provide one more example on the continue. Observe carefully. So this is some logical related example I want to provide here. What I will do, so I will come up with the one more class, continue table. Okay, now observe. So this is the one more example I'm trying to provide. So using this particular continue. Now what I will do, so outer I'm using, and this is the loop I'm trying to define here. Int I is equals to 0, I less than 10, and I plus plus. So once this loop is will define here, now what I'm doing here, I come up with a one more loop here. Int j is equals to 0, so j less than, again I'm making 10. Okay, so this is the nested loop. So inside this particular nested loop, now what I'm doing here, I'm making the condition. If this particular j is greater than of I, if this particular j is greater than of this particular I, now what I'm doing here, First, I'm trying to use empty println statement here, right? And now continue outer in the pen. So whenever the j values greater than to this particular I, now what I'm doing is I'm trying to use the continue. I'm printing one empty line. I'm trying to use the continue. So after this, if the if condition is not satisfied here, so now I'm trying to print this. I'm trying to print this particular value. So observe the values how I'm trying to print. So I'm trying to come up with a multiplication. So I multiply j. I multiply j. So now you can see this is the outer loop. Once outer loop is completed, so we may come up with some println statement. Okay, loop is completed. So observe carefully. We have a two loops here, outer loop as well as nested loop, and I'm coming with one label as well here. But only the condition what we are making, whenever the I value is greater than greater than to this particular j, so this condition will satisfy and we are doing the continue outer. Okay, first what we will do, we'll put a breakpoint here and we'll run the debug mode so that we'll get to know how this particular example will run. Okay, now understand here I value and j value. So what I will do, I will make this particular expression here, so into this particular watch. So you can see, so the second one we can see, let me remove this. Okay, so j greater than I. So right now it is returning false. So you can understand in the expressions as well as you can understand in the variable what is the values. So both we are having zeros. So this expression, whatever the condition we are making, line number 8, it will returning false. So once it is returning false, what we are doing here, we are multiplying the value. What is the value we are going to get? Something like 0. Okay, so it's printing on the console 0. So which loop is repeating? Nested loop. Getting the pen? So which loop is repeating here? So now understand here j loop. Now you can see, so here what happening internally, the whatever the condition we are writing here, it is returning like the condition is returning true. So once it is returning true, we are printing empty line and we are moving into the outer here. Okay, so observe. So once we click on this particular continue outer, what happens internally? It will go to this particular outer statement here. So if we observe, so the next iteration is moving. Now what is I value? 1. What about the j value? J value 0. Because whenever we are coming multiple times here, the j value is going to start from the 0. Okay, so j value 0, I value 1. And now you can check here, this particular expression is returning false here. In the expression section, we can see it is returning false. So we'll move on to the next statement. And I value 1 and j value 0. So what is the result we are going to get? Again, 0. The multiplication is returning 0. So now, what is the j value? J value 1, I value 1. Still this expression is returning false. Okay, so now we are multiplying the value. What is the value we are getting? 1. But if you observe, so this time the expression is returning true. This time the expression is returning true. So once it is returning true, now understand here. Again we are moving into the next line and we are moving into the outer here. So this is I value 2, j value 0, it's multiplying, and j value 1, again it is multiplying, j value 2, again it is multiplying here. So when the j value 3, it's returning 3, so it's returning true. So observe how this particular the hierarchy is coming here. Getting the point? How this particular hierarchy is coming is important. So initially it started with the one value, later it started with the two values, now it is started with the three value. So for the second iteration, like second one more iteration, it will come from the four values. So now observe, so four values are coming. Okay, now you can see, now right now five values are printing. Getting the point? So you can see the values are increasing here. Okay, the I value, so 8, getting the point? Now you can see 9 and loop is completed. Getting the point? This particular loop is completed here. So what you understand here? See, observe carefully how this particular output is printing. So from your 81, now you can see how this particular order is coming. This is very important here. Getting the point? So how we are achieving this with help of this particular continue outer? We come up with one condition, something like j greater than I. Getting the point? J greater than I, and we come up with the multiplication values. Okay. So any questions here? This is the one more example we are using with help of this particular continue.
Sir, for which value are we getting loop is complete? Is it checking both I less than 10 and j less than 10?
So basically this loop is completed. We define outside of this particular both the loops here.
Okay. 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 Thank you.
Okay. So this, yeah, this is all about the continuous statement. So we come up with a different example here. Now the last example we need to understand return here. So this is also a very important one, because this particular return, if you understand the basic, we are going to use in the method level more example on the return statement. Basically, return statements, basically if you want to return something from the appropriate location, from the method level or some different location, we are going to use. So returning something, for the returning the value, we are going to use this particular return statement. So observe how we are going to use this particular return here. So basically, whenever we are adding this particular return, so whatever the below lines of code we are going to write, it will not execute here. And so the syntax here, before, sorry, the return statement is the last statement wherever we are trying to write here. So this is important here. Now observe, Boolean I'm trying to define, and you can see false I'm trying to make the t value. And here, so what we can understand here, this out here. The sys out here before the return. Before this particular return statement here, and now what I'm doing here. So here I'm making not t, and I'm trying to return. So here return, we can write some value. This is the different way, but right now I'm not writing the value here. I am trying to use the return keyword after this semicolon. Getting the point? And here I'm trying to write one more statement here after the return. So this is important here. Observe carefully. So how many print statements are going to execute here? How many print statements are executing? Only one. Only one. Why the line number 9 is not executing here? Because if you observe carefully, whenever the condition is satisfied here, we are returning here. So whenever we are returning, the cursor is no longer available in the line number 9 here. The cursor is no longer available in the line number 9. So because of that, whatever the line number 9 we defined here, it will not execute here. Getting the point? It will not execute here. So this is important. We need to understand here. Okay. So this return related information we are going to discuss more whenever we are trying to work with a method related information here. So right now, if you're not returning, like if you come up with a return with some string related information or integer related value, so those value only it will return. Those value only it will return. So when we are not writing any value after the return, so the whatever the cursor is trying to execute the program, it will come out of the main method. Okay, if you say the line number 8 is satisfied, it will come out of this particular main method here. So once it is come out of the main method, we don't have option to execute this particular below statement here. Getting the point? This is important. So some cases we are going to write this also. Getting the point? Once this particular condition is satisfied, so if you're thinking we don't want to execute the below statements for, because whatever the condition we define, once the condition will satisfied, whatever the value we are expecting here, the value we are going to get from the particular appropriate condition. So in that case, now what we will think here, again we don't want to go to the different method what we are writing inside the condition here. So in that case, directly you can call the return here. So once you call this particular return, wherever, like from where the method is calling it will go back to the method here. Getting the point? It will go back to the method here. So we'll see the method related, the return related example more in our upcoming classes when we are trying to work with the method related informations here. Okay, so these are all the jump statement we are discussing here, break statement, continuous statements, as well as this particular return. So return, just we have a one example because we are going to discuss multiple in our upcoming classes here. Okay, so any questions so regarding our today's session?
So, just write a sysout statement after the main method, some sysout statement.
After the main method, so here
Yeah, after.
getting the point. So basically we cannot write any okay, sum dot out dot. So now you can see we are getting an error.
Okay. Okay.
If you read this, so you'll understand the println identifier expected after this token. Basically whatever we are going to write, so we should write inside this particular main method.
Okay. Okay, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so tomorrow we'll continue about the classes information. So from the tomorrow we are going to discuss more example here, and these are up to today whatever we discuss here. These are all the basic example here. Okay, and from the tomorrow onwards we are going to discuss more and more here, and don't miss the classes from tomorrow onwards here. Okay, we'll continue tomorrow.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.